Good afternoon. My name is LaNorman Strong, and I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs with responsibility for residential and student service programs. Days like today, for people like me, are very special. Today, we are here to honor a legacy, to pay homage to that legacy and what it's meant to this campus. We're here to celebrate the achievement of this structure, and we're also here to appreciate the fact that our plans on paper have transmitted into a wonderful, a fabulous lived experience for the students who are here. And you're going to have the opportunity to hear firsthand about that. At this point, I'd like to invite up Melissa Ng, who is the president of our Residence Hall Assembly, who is my co-host for this event. Melissa?
Hello. So we'd like to start out acknowledging the key people, and please stand up when I mention your name. The Martinez family,
Please.
Max's friends,
Don't be shy now.
UC Berkeley faculty and staff, Martinez Commons residents,
The rest are guarding the food.
Incentive Awards Program alumni, former colleagues,
Already stood up? Okay. Thank you. I'd, at this point, like to surprise one of my colleagues and ask Chris Harvey to come up and join me at the podium. As Chris comes up, I want you to know that he is the Director of Capital Projects in residential and student service programs, and he's the man who lived this project. I'd like to officially thank Chris, and see, he's trying to scoot away already. But he worked with a broad team of people that we'd like to recognize as a group, and we're going to do this as quickly as we can because there are so many people who've been a part of it. Let me start with our colleagues from the university's Capital Projects Office, sitting in the back as good stewards might. Guys, please stand so that we can recognize you. And if you'd stay standing, if there are any representatives of our architecture firm, EHDD, or our contractor, Vance Brown, we'd love you to stand at this point, too. And then there is the group we call the Anna Head Working Group, which basically is the RSSP staff team that participated in the planning. If you're here, could you stand as well? Thank you all. At this point, I'd like my co-host to come up, and she has a few shout-outs to do as well.
yes. And we also like to thank the Martinez Res Hall staff, so RD, RAs, and all of y'all too for being
So if you're here,
the advisors.
Come on. Their fearless leader, Amanda. Is that it? And I'm not sure if a representative is from our environmental health and safety group, if Fire Marshal Yoon is with us. Is he here? Well, he's a gentleman that if you see him, those of us who get to interact with him, let him know how much we appreciate his good work. And now there's a team that I mostly don't see here, probably because their time is about to end for the workday, and that's the collective RSSP housekeeping group. Are you here? Well, Jeff, if you will give them our thanks and our regards. Okay.
And if you're here, the Central Maintenance Group.
Members of the Central Maintenance Group. All those hard workers who are working. Okay, we'll just go right into the text now. And I'd like to now begin the formal part of the program by introducing you again to Melissa Ng, who will offer comments on behalf of the Residence Hall Assembly. Melissa?
Thank you. So as the president of RHA, a student-run government body structured around the importance of providing student representation in the decisions that affect them and their community, I'm honored to be one of the first residents living in the newly built Martinez Commons. The completion of this complex is a great step forward towards continually improving RHA's purpose of being the voice of the residents. RHA has been engaged with the Residential and Student Service Programs, RSSP, in the past years to leverage student voice and carry out what our residents want during their stay in the res halls. Just last year, RHA was invited to view possible furnishing from multiple vendors while they were building Martinez. So that was really cool. Martinez and hopefully other future complexes is what RSSP is working towards to provide more housing and to help retain returning students. Many second years and upperclassmen tend to not stay in the res halls, partially due to the fact that there are not enough spaces to house them in. And a statistic that I got from Associate Vice Chancellor Norman Strong the other day was that there are actually over 1,700 students who applied for housing in this wonderful building here, but unfortunately we only had about 400 spaces to house students in. And I think that's a great example of how much students love being in the res halls and how convenient our services are, such as or provided by Cal Housing, Cal Dining, and a multitude of other great services that we have here that residents have access in the res halls. And I feel RHA's mission ties in well with the mission of what Maximino Martinez was. He worked in student affairs for a really long time, and he had also had other passions such as the Incentive Awards Program to provide affordable college experience for students from low-income communities, and other student organizations on campus as well. He also loved working with students so that students could have a voice. Since Martinez gives priority housing to second years, this helps RHA to be more inclusive in how we're representing the student voice in the res halls. Even though there are some second years and upperclassmen living in our various units here and there, the majority of our students are first years. And it's wonderful to have more voices around the table as we move to better represent our housing population in the assembly room. This year, 3 of our 4 elected representatives from Martinez were actually part of RHA last year and returned to not only live in Martinez, but also to represent Martinez as well. And I think that's a great testament to not only how rewarding it is to be in RHA, but also how wonderful our res halls are. And speaking of how great it is to live in the res halls, I have to say, and I'm kind of gushing right now because I really enjoy spending the last 4 weeks that I've been here living in Martinez. It's a wonderful building. While a new building comes with some challenges, I personally think that the positives just completely outshine them all. The design of the building and facilities are really unique, and I think it utilizes space really well. There are also a lot of study spaces. There, I believe, are like 2 or 3 study lounges on each floor, and that's more than any other res halls that I've seen so far. But I have to say The thing I like the most about Martinez is the inner courtyard, which y'all will get a chance to see later on. There are some bamboos and benches similar to these, rocks everywhere, and it just looks really calming. And that's something that's really nice for me when I come home because my door is right there in the courtyard, so I'll just like walk through this calming space and then, get into the craziness of work again. But that's still something that I look forward to every day. And with that, I'll end with my happy gushings about the building. And it will be my honor to introduce to you Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Harry LeGrand. Vice Chancellor Harry LeGrand has served the university for more than 30 years, and for the last 4 years is the Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs.
I am too old for a cast and crutches. But my Achilles tendon and a bone decided that, too bad, you're going to have to do it anyway. First of all, let me say welcome to Max Martinez Commons. Max was a classy guy, and this building is a classy building. Wouldn't you agree? So historically, student housing buildings at Cal have been named after individuals who fit one or more of the 5 categories: to honor a faculty or staff member or alumnus who during the course of their career made significant contributions to improving student life at Cal, to honor a university regent who was active in supporting student welfare, to honor a donor to a housing programs or their designee, to honor distinguished Berkeley graduates, and to honor an individual not associated with UC, but associated with the site of a student residence hall. While I was Associate Vice Chancellor of RSSP, I filed away in my head the opportunity to name a building after a staff member, since we had many named after alums, faculty, and even regents. I remember mentioning to Genaro Padilla when he was a VC of Student Affairs, and I said when the right facility and the required time had passed, I thought Max was an appropriate choice for that first building. He supported it then as he supported it now when he returned to the English department. I felt it was important to memorialize staff that impacts the lives of students in a positive way. It is rare for a staff member to really be recognized in this manner. While there are many who fit this description, Max's untimely death cemented an opportunity for this to become a reality. When I look at this building and the name given to it, Max Martinez, it truly personifies the Max that we all knew. Its beauty, the columns that hold up the building, the natural wood that has stood the test of time, the openness is designed to bring people together, the natural light that floods the building, and a whole host of others. All these descriptors carry the shadow of Max. We couldn't have given this structure a more fitting name. His commitments to students by always championing their access and opportunity for higher education, his ability to relate to students who saw him as an advocate of their concerns, a leader by example, he was a giver and he taught us how to give back. Max set the standard for service and distinction. Committed to diversity, Max always made you feel comfortable in his presence. I'm a better person for knowing Max, and this beautiful structure will always remind us of his lasting impact to the university. There were some quotes from some former students and counselors and colleagues about Max that I thought I would just share before I end my remarks. And part of this is what we do to actually get a building name. We have to submit a packet of information that shows why the individual is worthy of that distinction. So quotes for students, counselors, and colleagues about Max. Max was a hero and inspiration. He opened the gates of opportunity of higher education to countless young people. He was amazingly kind and compassionate. He was passionate in his commitment to students. He was consistent, flexible, encouraging, patient, and involved. He was a coach, a warm father figure. Max was a father I never had. More than a friend, Max was like a father to us all. Dedicated and generous advocate. Impacted so many lives. He set the standard for service and distinction that will be hard to surpass, but it will be his friendship and his presence that will always be impossible to replace. And finally, Max was a wonderful human being who made a difference in the lives of so many. He, along with others at the Incentive Awards program, was responsible for turning my life around, and I will be forever grateful to him. Thank you very much. And I'm stuck here until those crutches come back. So.
Thank you, Harry. I'd like to now call to the podium Professor Genaro Padilla, our former Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, who is now back in the English department, but also in leadership in the Letters and Science School. Genaro.
Well, good afternoon. I'm especially thankful that the entire Martinez familia can be here today, the Martinez family and friends, Max's world, the world that is represented and symbolized in this magnificent new building that once again represents not only the lives of Berkeley students, but for the kind of work that Max did, the sustained commitment and hope that students in schools across California, especially from low-income, underserved, crappy schools, will one day find the measure of their intelligence at places like Berkeley, which Max was committed to on a daily basis. Those of us who worked with Max always had a wonderful time with him. So I'm going to give, there'll be sort of three quick parts here. What I call the before, the day of, and the years after. Before, one of the great things I learned from Max was the personal appeal that he brought to groups of students in their schools, both encouraging and cajoling them to concentrate, to be disciplined, to commit themselves to the kind of intellectual possibility that they might represent for themselves in their communities. And all of that against extraordinary odds. We once visited a group of schools in San Francisco, one of them at one of the tough schools, and so before we got there, we stopped at a donut shop to have coffee because we couldn't get there until like 9 in the morning, and of course, unlike me, Max was very prompt getting places, so we were early. We stopped at a donut shop, and after all, it was like a donut shop. So I had 2 or 3 donuts, and my coffee, and Max didn't. He didn't have any donuts. It was like, what? You bring me to a donut shop, and you don't even. Well, I've already eaten. So thanks a lot, Charlotte. Took care of that. Our time at that school was measured once again by the kind of profound influence that Max exercised with students. And he taught me a great deal that and other days about the reality of life for so many students. We were not looking at, as here in the offices, we were not looking at data sets, we were not looking at simulations, we were not looking at cold, hard data. We were in the space where students were deciding what they might do with their lives, and he was a master at being able to bring them into a world of possibility. The day of, I was in a meeting in California Hall when a message was conveyed to me that Max had collapsed in the RSF building playing basketball. All of us were brokenhearted at once, and I remember visiting with Charlotte. Max, as I'll say, come back to, worked very hard and then died doing what he loved doing, which was playing basketball, being in the world. That few days was a moment of profound grief, I think, for all of us, and obviously for the Martinez family as a whole. You know, in the years after, what happens when we lose people, and it certainly happened immediately after Max died for months, and then for me over the course of a number of years, you actually see people who are gone. There were many, many times when I thought I had seen Max in the distance. When you see a tall guy with, you know, wavy silver hair, every once in a while I was like, wait a minute, is that Max? You ever have that sensation? The people who have died and left us, somehow that residual of their presence is sustained for us in ways that are difficult to understand, but always very real. And what I've come to understand when I see Max appear and reappear over the years, as I have other friends and family that I've lost to mortality, is a reminder of my own mortality, of my own impending moment. And what I'm struck by when I think of Max in this way is many things, but I'll only touch on two. The first is to maintain your commitment to the things that really matter. For those of us at Berkeley who are committed to bringing students from underrepresented communities, from poor communities, from Chicano communities, from African American communities, from Asian communities, that core set of values cannot be surrendered. I never saw Max surrender that, and when I see him in the distance, that's what I remember. The other, and equally important, is Max insisting on playing basketball, even though, as I understand it, he had something of a heart condition. Is that correct? Didn't exactly know it, but you know, it was a reminder that every day is precious, that the routines of everyday experience are what sustain us, that the friendship that we have with each other is not something to be taken for granted, that our families are at the center of our existence, and that being ready for that moment is quite simply a matter of being alive in the moment. And finally, that's what I remember about Max and the day we lost him, is that he was alive in the moment. And for us, and in the symbolism of this building, he's alive today. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Padilla. And I am pleased to introduce to you Bob Laird, the former Director of Admissions.
It's both an honor and a privilege to have been asked by Charlotte to speak at this naming ceremony for my friend and co-worker, Maximino Martinez. Max and I worked together for more than a decade. In the mid-1980s, I was on the committee that interviewed Max when the Office of Relations with Schools, ORS, where I worked, admissions teaches you to be flexible. When the Office of Relations with Schools, where I worked, stole Max from the financial aid office one floor above us in Sproul Hall, a delicate matter because my wife, Karen Rice, worked in that financial aid office. After ORS hired Max, he and I worked together for several years. When ORS merged with the Office of Undergraduate Admission, and I then subsequently became director of the Office of Undergraduate Admission and Relations with Schools, I was delighted to have Max in that combined office. When he moved to the Incentive Awards Program, IAP, we continued to work together in a different set of ways. First, Max was a very effective, even aggressive liaison advocate for IAP to the admissions office. And second, he continued as a highly valued reader in our freshman admission reading process. When I think of Max, I think first of his integrity. He never took shortcuts in doing the job that he felt was necessary to extend opportunity to prospective students and their families, or to support students once they had enrolled at UC Berkeley, even if that meant long hours traveling the entire state of California or working 60 or 70-hour weeks, which he often did. More important to me, Max always spoke his mind, carefully and courteously, regardless of the rank or position of the people in a particular meeting or discussion. And over time, he was a powerful force in keeping important segments of the university both honest and forthright. Max was a truly remarkable person who influenced the lives of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of prospective students and their families. And he helped many hundreds of those students succeed at Berkeley once they had enrolled here. He was deeply committed, as both Hanaro and Harry have said, to providing opportunities for students, especially students from low-income families or students who are African American, Latino, or Native American. But beyond his exemplary commitment was his extraordinary effectiveness at recruiting such students to Berkeley and his determination to be sure that they succeeded when they enrolled here. Part of this effectiveness was his own personal charisma. It was impossible not to like Max, and he used that charisma in a genuine way to make students feel valued and wanted, and to want to succeed not just for themselves, but also to some extent for Max. In all the years that I worked with Max, I never heard a single student, parent, staff member, or faculty member say anything critical of him. Personally, my only criticism of Max is that he once had the bad manners to block my jump shot in the Sunday morning basketball game that we both sometimes played in together. Let the record show, however, that I then blocked his amazing right-handed hook shot. Max was an exemplary employee, but much more important, he was an exemplary human being. He embodied all of the qualities that we most want in a person who works with young people, especially disadvantaged young people and their families, and determines and helps them determine to succeed. He was, as I've noted, incredibly charismatic. He was also killer handsome. But Charlotte, with her great sense of humor, was more than a match for Max. As she said at the memorial service for Max 9 years ago, his death was a blow to women's fantasies everywhere. But his death was also deeply painful to his family and to his friends, and an enormous loss for the University of California at Berkeley. In the 22 years that I worked at UC Berkeley, I did not meet a single individual more deserving of this recognition than Maximino Martinez. Naming this commons in his honor enables all of us to recapture some portion of his spirit and of his heart. It is most fitting. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you and to call to the podium Efrain Barrera, a former Incentive Awards program participant. Ephraim?
Welcome, everyone. It's a privilege to be here in honor of such an exemplary mentor, Maximino Max Martinez. We're gathered here to pay tribute and celebrate his legacy. I'm standing here today as a living testament to the countless lives that have been changed by the Incentive Awards program. I'm here to acknowledge that my academic success was no accidental feat, but rather it was the product of a communal effort carried out by great mentors like Max, who inspired us all and fostered our determination to graduate from UC Berkeley. I was born in El Salvador. I immigrated to the United States when I was 15 years old. Prior to my arrival, my mother had worked in this country for over 12 years. On May 9th, 1993, her dream of reuniting with her 6 children was realized. Early in life, I learned that doing well in school became the only way I could show my appreciation to my mother for her years of sacrifice. My efforts paid off in the spring of 1997 when I learned that not only I had gained acceptance into UC Berkeley, but also I had been selected as one of 20 recipients of the Incentive Award Scholarship. When I first started at Cal, I felt overwhelmed and out of place. Thankfully, to the Incentive Awards program, they made every effort possible to provide us with guidance and support necessary to ease our transition into the university life. Max Martinez joined the Incentive Awards team during my second year at Cal. I first met Max at an incentive freshman orientation. He greeted us with a big smile and shared that he felt honored to be in the midst of such great minds. He had a way of making us feel welcome. From that day forward, Max became my mentor. When I was struggling to keep up with class assignments, he taught me time management techniques. When I was failing my economics class, a course that he had suggested, he helped me find a tutor. When I find myself torn between different majors, Max helped me lay out a plan. Although he encouraged me to explore different fields, ultimately, I chose to major in sociology just like he had, in part because I was inspired by how much he enjoyed his work. The Incentive Awards program not only provided us with a support structure and committed personnel, but it also offered us a network of scholars, friends, mentors, and most of all, it crafted a nurturing family from far away from home. One of the key components of the program has always been the desire to give back. Max played an instrumental role in coordinating outreach visits amongst the incentive scholars to return to their own high schools to promote the importance of higher education. I was fortunate to work closely with him in organizing several visits throughout the Bay Area. It has been 11 years since I graduated from Cal. Although I have worked in a variety of settings, ranging from nonprofits, high schools, private college, my underlying career path has always been education. I'm currently working in an elementary school in San Francisco, and not a day goes by where I don't see myself reflected in the lives of the kids I work with. As I learn about their daily struggles, I am reminded of how far I have come. In closing, I want to congratulate those of you, those students, who will have the privilege of residing in the elegant Max Martinez Common Building. May this building stand as a beacon of hope, a symbol of Max's commitment and dedication to those of us who beat many odds to get here. I kindly ask that you take pride in his memory and that you live out his legacy of community service by helping others achieve their dreams. Thank you.
Thank you, Ephraim. Oh, thank you, Ephraim. And I am honored to introduce to you Reverend Randolph Roth, a close friend of the Martinez family.
I've been asked by Max's family to express gratitude for this incredible honor and to share just a few of a treasure trove of memories. In particular, these remarks are expressed on behalf of Max's wife, Charlotte, his daughters, Ophelia, Jennifer, and Jessica, and his siblings, Marie, Xavier, and Manny. On May 2nd, 2003, Max Martinez died suddenly of a heart attack at the age of 56 while playing basketball at lunchtime at Cal's recreational sports facility. Among the several things we had in common is that we were both proud grandfathers of Samuel David Roth, who was 4 months old when Max died. If only Max could see Samuel now, as well as his other 8 grandchildren, Janessa Devine Habelt, Benjamin Max Habelt, Naomi Elise Habelt, Eli Hudson Roth, Jonathan Adlai Roth, Leah Joy Roth, Olivia Lynn Garraway, and Maximino Cruz Garraway. Yes. That's quite a legacy in itself, isn't it? For 20 years, Max worked at Cal Berkeley, most recently, as has been mentioned in the Incentive Awards program, in outreach to promising undergraduate, underrepresented youth, encouraging them to go to college and helping them navigate the University of California admissions standards and procedures. There were 2 memorial services for Max, both standing room only, one at First Covenant Church and the other at Cal. I was privileged to attend both of those services. The student speakers at the Cal service gave heartfelt tributes to Max for his caring and consistent mentoring. They said if it weren't for his support and guidance, they would not have gone to any college, let alone Cal Berkeley. Several went on to say, Max was a father to me. And for many, Max was more than a mentor. He was the dad they never had. Max's daughter, Jennifer, made this comment after a family preview tour of Maximino Martinez Commons. She said, "The location of the Commons is where my dad often parked his car to go to work. I remember parking there with my dad frequently, which makes it even more special." As the family tour progressed, everyone was in absolute awe of this 6-story contemporary building in hues of yellow, but green through and through. When we came upon a designated area of refuge in case of emergency, it became a laugh out loud moment as family members remember Max being Mr. Safety and overly cautious about smoke alarms and how this new building is over the top with safety features for the students. Max was a tremendous role model as a dad, protective of his 3 daughters. For example, when the high school guys would have a date with his gorgeous daughters, they were required to come to the door, no honking from the curb. Later years, the daughters told their parents how much the boys were intimidated by Max because he was so tall and because of his direct contact with them. Each of the men his 3 daughters married Todd, David, and Peter are very much like their father-in-law, humble, protective, men of integrity. An example of Max's integrity was that he kept meticulous account of his working hours so as not to take advantage of the university. He was honest about his expenses, which he never exaggerated to his advantage. And in high school, Max met with his counselor at Harry L's High School in Richmond and showed him the courses he wanted to take, all college prep courses. The counselor said, "You're a Mexican. Mexicans don't take college prep courses. You take shop classes." Since he was not allowed to take college prep in high school, he went on to Contra Costa Community College, where he had to take the classes he missed in high school in order to catch up. He eventually transferred to Cal, where he obtained his bachelor degree. In the early 70s, Max was deeply involved in the Cesar Chavez farm workers movement and hired by the president of Contra Costa College to help create their Chicano Studies Department, which has been renamed La Raza Studies. And then, reflecting on her husband's character, Charlotte noted a passage in the New Testament scriptures, 1 Peter 5:5, "Clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble." And then she commented, "Max would be stunned at this dedication." Max was an ordinary guy with an extraordinary vision. He had compassion on the underdog, the underrepresented, because that's where he came from. He often said, "I don't want to go into management because I don't want to give up working with students directly." As an applications essay reader for admissions, Max would read essays until midnight for weeks, and he would be weeping, tears running down his face, as he read students' life stories. Another example of Max's tender heart is when a student and her family lost their home and everything in it. So Max took Charlotte to Home Depot to cost out what it would take to replace all the appliances, and then he got a gift card for that amount and gave it to the family of this student. In closing, I quote from the campus memorial tribute, "Max changed the paradigm for countless young people whose lives he changed through his advocacy, his encouragement, and his inspiration. He will be remembered as a man who fiercely loved his family, had compassion for the underprivileged, and lived serving others." Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. I would like to call attention now to three people who are very special in this program, and then we're going to ask Professor Padilla to adjourn us. First is Marty Takamoto, who has been working with Mrs. Martinez. Marty, please stand. Marty is the architect behind this event. Working with him has been Brian Jones, executive assistant in my office. Brian, where are you? Okay. Thank you. And then a woman on whom we have hung many hopes as she leads this residential community. Amanda Doss. Amanda, could you stand, please? Thank you. Hanaro, the mic is yours.
Well, if you remember, there is no use. There's no use in doing this unless we're going to do it right. So, fresh bottle. Well, you know, we just drink it out of the bottle after being polite. I want to offer this toast to Max. He and I are going to have a drink together. Salud. And we're going to christen this building. Cool. Welcome. There's a lot in there, so. All right, it was so wonderful to see all of you gathered here today. This is an extraordinary tribute to an extraordinary man. Great.